A wild weekend in Pennsylvania. Now the U.S. Secret Service investigating, as is the FBI, how a gunman armed with an AR-style rifle was able to get on a nearby roof and shoot and injure former U.S. President Donald Trump at a rally. Dr. Alan Mendoza is the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society and joins us on GMH on 900 CHML. Dr. Mendoza, welcome.
Good morning.
I think one of the big questions many people are asking is, how does this happen in 2024?
Well, exactly. Unfortunately, America's had a history of political violence. We know full well that in the past, presidential candidates have been assassinated, or attempts have been made to assassinate them. And clearly, given the political differences that have been bubbling up for so long now in the US, the divergence, the division, it should have been obvious to everyone that an attack like this could have happened, and unfortunately it did happen. And part of that is obviously an indictment of the political culture of the US at the moment, and part of it is a security failure, because of course that is what ultimately allowed the gunman to shoot his weapon.
There are so many conspiracy theories out there. The shooter, Thomas Crooks, was hired by the Democrats. This whole thing was staged by Trump. So much disinformation online. It really shows how unstable, unsure, even cynical the public has become.
Well, it's unfortunately the case that when you have an event like this, which seems on the one hand inexplicable as to how it could happen, people do reach for conclusions that aren't there. I mean, unfortunately, almost always these are what we would call in the UK a cock-up case rather than a conspiracy. And it's a mistake, a terrible series of mistakes in this case that have allowed it to happen. But people are reaching out because they've lost faith in institutions, they have lost faith in leaders, and they wish to, come up with a more sort of exciting conclusion than the rather basic one, which is that the Secret Service failed to do its job.
Talking about the attempted assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump at a rally this weekend in Pennsylvania with our guest, Dr. Alan Mendoza, the founder and executive director of the Henry Jackson Society. Trump's reaction to being shot, fist pumping, saying fight, fight, the photograph that has really been spread around the world, that was a hugely impactful response, wasn't it?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, if you look at what happened there, he's been shot. He ducks very quickly because he remembers his training, obviously, which is you get down, because often in these assassinations, it's not the first bullet that gets you, it's actually three or four. For example, with JFK, I believe it was the third bullet that actually was the fatal shot. So he ducks down, but then, despite being hit and despite being carried off the stage, essentially, by his detail, he's got the presence of mind to, A, show he's okay, and B, to be defiant. And that is a remarkable moment of composure in a very difficult time. And of course, that will have done his leadership credentials no harm. But it was also, I think, important at that moment because it stopped a general panic, I think. Seeing that he was okay and able to do that gesture, I think, calmed a lot of people down.
President Biden's response, he made a couple of statements over the weekend, including last night in a primetime address at the Oval Office, saying there's no place for hate. He has pulled some election ads. What do you make of the president's response?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely appropriate. I think it's a terrible event has happened. People have died in this event. A presidential candidate was almost assassinated. If there's ever a moment to bring the country together and for people to look beyond the differences and try and remember what actually unites the USA as a nation, this is it. I think President Biden has made great strides in doing so. We're now hearing that Donald Trump is going to be doing the same as well in his speech at the Republican convention.
There's a big what if here, and that what if is, what if Trump was killed? Could you have imagined what would have happened in America?
Well, it's not worth thinking about. I mean, in the past, when we've had moments of great division and then a political leader is killed, we've seen riots, we've seen further division, we've seen a country at war with itself. And thankfully, none of those things happened, but we were just a hairbreadth away from that. I mean, the distance here between triumph and tragedy was a couple of centimeters. It's quite extraordinary he has survived this, yet he has done. And therefore, we can look back and go, what if? But I think a better way to look forward is to say, well, what next? And what can we do better? What can the USA do better as a nation to stop things like this from happening and to change the discourse in politics and make it about ideas, sure, but not about personal hatreds.
Last one for you. What ramifications do you think this will have on the election campaign?
Well, the obvious case in point, I think, is that Donald Trump is seen as a great survivor. I mean, he's literally survived an assassination attempt, and he's done so, frankly, quite gracefully and quite, kind of in a way that was surprising to everyone watching. The key to it, though, I think, as to whether he makes gains from this in the electoral cycle is what his response is in his speech to the Republican convention. We've already been told he's not going to go after President Biden. He's going to change tone himself. I think if he does that, I think if he looks back on this as a moment when he too should change his tactics, he will be seen very differently by the American people. And I suspect that this could be the moment that we've worked out who might be the winner in this year's contest.
I think we're all looking forward to hearing what he's going to say on Thursday. Dr. Mendoza, thank you so much for your time this morning.